here's Ed Bernstein.
Hi, well, my guest today is Jimmy Vaccaro, and hey, if you want to know who to bet in the upcoming games, especially these NBA games, right, Jimmy?
Okay.
You stay tuned, because Jimmy is not only the foremost, ideal sports handicapper in town, odds maker. Is that what you say, odds maker? Are you still an odds? You don't make the odds, do you?
Well, now what it is, it's more of a combination of, like, you do quite a bit of things if you're, in a sense, has something to do with the outcome of the sportsbook wagering for the day. Back at the South Point right now, Chris Andrews is actually the sportsbook manager. I'm more or less an odds maker, bookmaker. It's like a hybrid, and I help when I can. But it's working out relatively well. But yes, you do much more than you did when I was a kid, way back in '75.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I wanted to ask you, how do you create odds? I mean, where does this start? Let's say you were going to handicap like the last presidential election.
And
you did. Okay, so how would you go about A to Z in creating, that formula?
Well, first of all, just the point spreads on football games. We have a lot of those things up for next season already because it's such a popular item. But the first thing you look at is naturally the power rating. You carry them over from year to year, and you go from there. And you adjust going into the new season.
So it's an historical measure.
Yes,
in the
historical measure. You want to see, the coaching changes. Naturally, college is a little bit different because you have a lot of people leave. The draft has a little bit of an effect. But then you go with the power rating. Then you adjust maybe to what you would consider would be a home field advantage. And then you simply go from there. It's rolling on only because the information is so forthcoming anymore. It's actually everywhere. And you can go back, look at the historical trends that might obviously happen. And now with the general public being involved, you tend to bend a little bit more for the favorites because the general public likes to bet what we call marquee teams.
Right.
The New England Patriots. Every week we'll get a lot of money on the Patriots because it's a marquee team. So it's not behind the green door anymore like it once was. Everybody does things, and we do it at such a fast rate. And also, everybody's computerized anymore. So if you go to your computer, if you have a Dawn Best screen, you can see the odds at every casino in the city, and they can see what we have. So you're staring at something now that's actually out there for the general public to see. So it is quite different. But the feel and understanding of bridging the gap from like old school to new school, you must go across the bridge. You don't have to jump into the river, but I still utilize some of the old things that I did, but I'm not stubborn with the new way of doing business.
So how do you account for the subjective part of it? I mean, I've always had a philosophy that when you're in like the playoffs or the finals, that by and large, teams are comparatively equal.
Correct.
To get there. So then, in my opinion, it always became who was hungrier, who wants to win this game more. How do you account for that?
Well, you account week by week. You can see where teams are. You can see where teams, if they lose this week, they had no chance to get into the playoffs. You have things such as, wow, look at this, Jimmy. You see what happened, and we're going to shade it a little bit more because it is such a public team. So you go in there with the idea of and remember, the first bet you take might be on someone you really respect, or might be someone who just simply likes to bet a lot of money. In those occasions, subjectively, you might move it a point on a guy betting 3,000 and not move it anything if a guy bets 30,000. It's the idea of the old school drifting into the new school and say, listen, I don't have to run so fast with this number because this guy likes to bet a lot of money, but he has no clue obviously what power ratings mean. So we adjust quicker on people whom we respect much more than the guy betting a lot of money.
And when you talk about the Patriots and teams like that, once you win and you come back the next year and everybody's kind of gunning for you, right? I mean, you're the team who did it all, whether it's baseball, whatever sport it is it harder to stay up on top? And because I remember there was an interview with Mike Tyson after he won, the morning after he won the heavyweight championship of the world for the first time.
Right.
And they asked Mike Tyson, reporter did, how is your life different today, Mike? And Mike said, it's going to be a little bit harder to run 5 miles this morning.
Correct.
In other words, he got to the pinnacle, he got to the top. Is human nature almost, okay, to not work as hard when you're up there for most people?
Well, It's different when you have a sport that's involved just to one person. Mike is just simply him. Now let's go to the Patriots, who've been doing it for so long. It's a whole staff, obviously, throwing their 2 cents in. You have a quarterback that, very apparent, a first-round Hall of Famer, but more important, a coach that is driven, much more than any player that I've ever seen. I'll just give you an example with that. The Patriots, they do it year after year after year. Just 2 days ago, we put up our season win totals on how many games you think certain teams will win during the course of the year. The highest number, 11.5. Who is it? The New England Patriots.
Right.
They simply have a good formula. Everything works together. Now you go to the other organizations, which, they're the, Cincinnati Bengals. They've been running around in circles for years. It has a lot to do with whom the coach is and obviously upper management.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into this business. I mean, you came to Vegas in the mid-'70s, didn't know anything about sports betting, right?
No.
At the
Well,
time?
sports betting I knew. I didn't understand bookmaking because I wasn't a bookmaker growing up back in Pittsburgh. And yes, you're a Pennsylvania guy too. So as you know, Ed, growing up there, in the 60s, it was just simply every corner had a pool room, every corner had a place you could make a bet, every corner had a parlay card stand, everything like that. I enjoyed that. I was always absorbed by it. I would go to the local pool room and watch the guys play, gin. I would watch them play pool. I was always encompassed by all that stuff. And so as a youngster, bouncing around and then coming to Las Vegas, getting broke in about 4 hours, then going back to Pittsburgh. So one day I said to my friend, I said, what's the sense of me going home? Might as well stay. So I went, but I did go back, get my stuff, came out, and in January of 1975, I landed here. I never had a job before that. I never filed an income tax return till my first year, and the biggest break I got was when Michael Gaughan owned a little Royal Inn on Convention Center Drive, as we know is now just debris over there, and got a job. Frank Totti hired me as a 21 dealer, and then about a year later, Michael Gaughan gave me the, do you know how to run a sports book? And I said, no, I don't know how to run a sports book. He said, good, neither do I. And we started with 3 cardboard tables and a little chalkboard, and obviously everything went good from there. From there to the Barbie, to the MGM, to Steve Wynn, and everything else.
But when you start, it doesn't just go well and continue upward, right? I mean, you didn't know the industry.
Correct.
Michael didn't know the industry. I mean, you must have taken some hits in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
My biggest thing, and I still tell us all the younger kids in this racket or business, whatever you want to call it, I said, don't be afraid to do something that no one has ever done, but don't make the same mistake twice. Michael, obviously, from the first time out, let me do what I thought was right. But he also said, again, kid, you can do it, but I want you to learn from your mistakes. So way back when, I used to stop at Churchill Downs and get their opening lines. I would stop at the Stardust, get their opening lines, then go to the Royal Inn and put a little bit of my touch on it, and I went from there. Mistakes, absolutely, but a learning pattern that I think I pretty well mastered, that helped quite a bit.
What's been the greatest mistake that you made over the years?
Greatest mistake?
Greatest mistake.
Oh, the greatest mistake I made was probably my second year putting up NFL win totals over and under when everything got to be crazy, and the more the wise guys jumped in there. So I probably lost about $200,000 or $300,000 simply on a mistake by moving the numbers instead of moving the juice. A little hard to explain to the general public out there, but they got me pretty good on that, and I understand from that particular point, even though I've lost more money in the course of a day, and another day that I was standing around, and Jackie Gaughan stopped into the bar because it was a Monday night, and he said, how'd you do, kid? I said, Jack, I said, we lost $1,400,000. He said, well, that's better than losing $2 million, isn't it, kid? And those type of things stuck in my head, and it's from there, yes, make a lot of mistakes, absolutely.
Because you know you're going to lose from time to time.
Correct.
It's part of the business.
You're exactly right.
Right.
We had, I don't know if you followed it, but March Madness, we had a youngster show up here, and he started betting. He bet $50,000 on North Carolina in the first game, the money line. Went to the second game for $100,000. Went to the third game, he bet $250,000. Then the championship game, he bet $525,000. He won them all. We lost them all.
And how do you deal with these really large bets? I remember there was a time when I think it was Bob Stupak, the first one to make that $1 million bet.
Correct. Bob.
Right.
Bob made the $1 million bet on that. Carl Icahn laid $2.4 million on the money line with me when I was at the Mirage. And Carl, as we would say in the racket, he bet a bad number, but he won his bet. You know, so those type of things. You know, you go. Bob was a creative character. Make no mistake about it. Called me at 5 o'clock in the morning, day of Super Bowl, that he wanted to bet. It was the Bengals and the 49ers. And I said, Bob, I said, you know, I'll take 300,000. I'm not going to take $1 million. And he settled on 100,000. I know he bet Gene Mayday from Little Caesars. He bet some at the Barbary, and he bet some at Caesar's Palace. But a character, yes, he was.
Is there a limit to how large a bet you'll take?
No, I mean, obviously it'll come down to the okaying of Chris Andrews or me once we get to a point, you know, where we figure that, like, you know, what is enough is enough. These are things that just, you know, in your brain you can, you know, A, get rid of some of it, B, it's not a bad gamble. So those are just situations that you come up with, but you have to react immediately. Once you know the flow of the game, we knew by taking that $525,000 bet on this North Carolina game that we could get rid of about $130,000 because we knew what the market value was on these games. So we reduced our liability a little bit, but we still lost about $300,000 on the game.
You know, it sounds to me like there's similarities between what you do and investing in the stock market.
Bang. Same thing.
It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, you watch, and you guys, and we'll talk about your show in a minute.
Okay.
But you watch these stockbroker, you know, CNBC and all these other stations, and you're giving you stock tips. The same way that I guess in the sports book industry,
Correct.
you're giving, you know, hey, this is where we are, this historical perspective. This is what we expect something to do.
Exactly.
Is it? Would you equate the science and the luck being the same in both those?
Well, I wouldn't. You know, luck supposedly, you know, it strikes on both sides. Some days you win the games you shouldn't win. Some days you lose the game you thought you had the winner in your back pocket. So you just continue and just do the right thing. Remember this, just like if we have a real good year in a sports book, we hold about 7.5% to 8% of the total money bet for the entire year. I have never, and the industry has never had a losing season. We've had losing months, but we've never had a losing season. And you're right. All it is, like, you throw it all into a big pot. At the end of the year, you just sort it out and go from there. We've never lost for a year, but we've had bad streaks. But you're right. The stock market guys, I see them one day talking about this stock. A week later, that joint's out of business. And then a week after that, they'll talk about somebody, and that stock went through the roof. So pretty close to exactly what we do. Matter of fact, I'd say, yeah, real damn close.
VSIN, which is Vegas Stats and Information Network.
Correct.
Airs out of the South Point Hotel and Casino. It airs every day,
Daily.
open to the public to come. Right there by the sports book at the South Point, and broadcasting live. And people are. I mean, is there an interaction between the guests and the commentators?
Well, it's been a great ride. We've only been doing it for 3 months now. How it started was very simple. I've been friends with Brent Musburger since over 25 years ago. It's fairly obvious talking to Brent, even when he was doing the games, he would always throw in a little something late on the point spread. So he was always fascinated by that. So going back to the Mirage days, I got to know him. Then he started to stay at the South Point when I was over there. And then from that point, he started talking about his nephew was into that, you know, cable networks and creating shows, whatever. So the introduction was made. I had dinner and lunch with him a bunch of times. Vinny Maiulo helped me out with the first concrete thing. But the major force was Michael Gaughan saying, okay, tell me what you think we can do. Michael built a beautiful, beautiful studio. Brent is on 2 hours a day. We're expanding by the end of the year. And Brent Musburger, to me, and I say this with all humility, he will be the next ambassador to sports wagering. He's going to help us get this thing over the top, taking bets nationwide.
And how do you feel about internet gambling? And I mean, it's kind of in a it's locked up in legislation, obviously, you know, with Congress trying to decide what to do with it. What do you think the best solution is?
They should call people like me, like a lot of other people that are associated with these racing sports books, listen to us, show them exactly what we do, show them exactly the amount of time that we put in making sure where the bets come from, that everything, the regulation is followed to 110%. I have told people over and over and over again, people who have the ability to make these big decisions, Come to the sports books for the weekend. Come to see exactly how we do it. You'll be amazed on what we do and what we go through to protect the industry, to protect the consumer. Nevada Gaming Control, we follow exactly the rules that are set. Then you have people like Michael Gaughan, who obviously says, you know, I'm going to build this studio for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is like to get some exposure for the South Point, but to show people exactly what it is. The camaraderie is incredible. They love to talk to Brent. They love to take pictures with him. And most important, they love to hear what he has to say. I hope, because I'm one of those people for over 30 years now, let's try it nationwide. You know what, Ed? If it doesn't work, stop it.
Why wouldn't it work?
Right.
I mean, the sports industry is just so huge.
Yeah.
And is football still the #1 betting, topic?
Yes. We get more money on the NFL than any other sport, but right behind it, a close second is college football. What a whirlwind ride it's been for the past 25 years. Used to be, for every $3 we would take on the NFL, we'd take 1 on the college. Now, it's pretty damn close. 2 reasons. First of all, just a love affair of a game that's gone through the roof, and B, the ESPNs and the networks, you know, we have over 30 games that we show on a Saturday with college football. It's a great boost and it's working well.
That's great. I want to talk to you about the different sports and the implication of what it means for Las Vegas. We'll be right back after this word. There are many types of careless drivers. Those who text and drive, drink and drive, and those distracted drivers. If you've been hurt, you need to call me.
Enough said. Call Ed. EdBernstein.com.
We're back with Jimmy Vaccaro from Vegas Stats and Information Network, also odds maker extraordinaire. We were talking about internet gambling. Everything you do here in Nevada is highly, highly regulated.
Correct.
And you talk about learning from mistakes. I mean, it's every time there's a problem or a situation, they create the new regulations, new security features to protect the public and the state. But you don't really have that on the internet. I mean, you hear horror stories about people betting online, and it's somewhere in some island or Eastern Europe that the bet's going to, and they never get paid.
Right.
On the flip side of that, I assume that you'd be totally in favor of having a system where your licensed establishment would be able to receive bets from anywhere in the world.
Correct.
Right? So how do you balance those two things?
Well, first of all, Ed, remember this. The Nevada Gaming Control is absolutely worried about the customer and consumer first. If you go to a sports book and you make a bet and you don't like the way that they stated it, or you didn't understand what it was all about, remember, you could go to Nevada Gaming Control within hours. An agent comes out, takes your side of the story, their side of the story, then sets up a date where you have a hearing. That's the protection and the integrity that we give the consumer. Make no mistake about it. Now, why it would work if we went nationwide is simple. We've been doing this for 50 years. We have all the kinks out. Nevada Gaming Controls give us regulations. The computer system blocks out anything you want to block out. I'll give you an example. Right now, with the phone apps are just a major hit in the state of Nevada. You can bet on your phone, but you must be in the state of Nevada. So every once in a while we'll get this. They'll call the casino, get me the sports book, and the kids will pick up and say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. I'm trying to get my phone. I can't get a bet in. Well, where are you at? He says, I'm about 2 miles from the South Point. The computer shows you on our GPS thing, you're past Prim, you're in California.
Right.
He says, sir, you're like 12 miles from the border. And there's like a silence. Well, how'd you know? Because that's the protection. You can't bet outside the state.
Right,
the same thing can be done. On our computer system, like everybody else in the state, we have safeguards. We have limits that, like, if they try to go above that limit, it'll come up on the screen and you can deny the bet if you care to. We are well regulated. We would make this thing work if the rest of the country would plug into us. A lot of good sports people out here, we could help them, but you know what? A lot of people think they're smarter than us.
Yeah, well, thank God for those people. That's how you make money.
Yeah.
Over the last 40 plus years that you've been here, you've seen significant changes. Would you ever, in 1975, had foreseen a day where we'd have a professional hockey team and a professional football team coming to Nevada?
Never. never even crossed my mind, like obviously most people who are living in the state of Nevada. It was something that was almost, taboo. Don't even talk about it. A major team where we have casino gambling, where we have betting on sports, that how could this happen? But you know what? We were all completely wrong. This will be the next part of the reinventing our industry. Make no mistake about it. But your question, I didn't have a clue, my friend. Absolutely no clue at all.
And are we allowed to bet on the Rebels? At one time, I remember you could not bet
Correct.
on the Rebels.
That was, I think it's been 10 or 12 years since we showed gaming on, why we should be able to take the bets on it, and they let us go with it, and they found out that it was benign, nothing crazy happened, right. So they were obviously on our side. Gaming has been very, very open anymore for us bringing ideas. This is the first year we booked stuff on the draft of the NFL. What we did was take it to the Gaming Control Board. They looked at it and said, okay, here's what you can and what you can't do. We did the draft. It was a huge success. A lot of people bet a lot of money and a lot of tickets. So you'll see stuff like that, making it better and better as we keep reinventing ourselves.
What's the importance of a hockey team coming to Las Vegas?
Well, from a greedy side of it, it'll boost the handle up on hockey betting. That's the first thing that I look at, being in the sportsbook industry. The second part is it's just another excuse why someone's going to come for the weekend. If you live in Buffalo and the game's in November, you know what, honey? Let's go to Las Vegas Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We can go to the shows, we can go to the hockey game, and we can have a good time. It'll be an absolute monster. And the Raiders, triple what I said about the hockey.
Yeah. And those seats will be very difficult to get, I think.
Oh, there's no doubt. You'll see scalpers galore at the beginning. But you know what? It'd be it's a great thing, and I am so happy that, finally, after all these years, it'll just boost the handle on these games. And you talk about Raider fans, we're getting them now. It'll be insane when they come and then they give you the Raiders every day now. We'll see what happens.
They refer to Las Vegas as the entertainment capital of the world, but it's also the sports capital of the world. I can remember, I'm sure you do, in the days we had Grand Prix races at Caesar's Palace, and the UFC was born, essentially, here in Las Vegas. And there was a time where the only sanctioned jurisdiction was Las Vegas to have fights. Right.
And, boxing is taking a step backwards. UFC is just gone the other way. We do more on the UFC now we do on boxing. Now, we had a fair fight the past weekend in England. Hopefully this kid can draw some big attention when he comes to America, but boxing is in the dredges right now. And UFC, very good handle, introducing people to a new sport, but more important from my side of the ball again is just it's an event. People come, it takes up what might have been a slow Saturday in action. Now it's pretty big action.
When the UFC started, how did you go about creating odds there? I mean, that must have been hard.
Well, it was very hard. Matter of fact, I would be lying if I told you we just looked at somebody else who we figured, was smart at this stuff, and most people just simply followed their lead at the beginning. Then after a while, you get to make your own decisions and get to see who did what. But yes, at the beginning, I would be lying if I told you Jimmy made the odds on the UFC. Completely out of line.
Right. This weekend we have we have NBA playoffs, right? What's your forecast on that?
NBA playoffs. NBA playoffs have been good so far. Again, I like the first round more than anything because at times you have 4 games a day. It's very, very interesting. It's very entertaining. It fills a great void. We're leading up into Kentucky Derby weekend, NBA playoffs, and Major League Baseball is in full swing. You'll be surprised how many people come out. They might not bet the same amount of money they do on an NFL regular season game, but trust me, they bet a lot of money.
So do you think Cleveland repeats?
Yeah. I think Cleveland will take it to the 7th game and win it on a last.
Golden State again?
Yeah, Golden State. Golden State will be there. Cleveland will be a little tougher time, but I think they'll get through it. This kid's an absolute monster, LeBron James. Forget about everybody else. He's the best player in the world.
A game a week or so ago, he kind of won the game himself.
Yes, he did.
Right?
Yes, he did.
Amazing. And okay, we talked horse racing.
Okay.
hear complaints all the time about the horse racing industry, the tracks not doing well, younger people not engaging in horse racing.
That's more on us. That's more on the racing industry. We have to come up with some unique ways of getting people involved, especially the 21 to 45-year-old range. Now, the guys our age are still betting the races, but we're losing them by the month.
Right.
Sadly, the state handle has been going down for the past 10 years. Now, the Derby weekend and the Breeders' Cup, big weekend. But we have to be creative. We must create some bigger pools that you can do in the state of Nevada. That is on the industry, not anybody else.
I bet a few of our viewers actually remember, although I do, we used to have a greyhound track here. Greyhound racing is
Henderson.
a little bit less sophisticated than horse racing, right?
Yeah.
Harder to handicap?
Yeah, I didn't have a clue. I went for a couple of times and said, I don't understand it, but it was a night out. But as you can see, maybe because it was so far out there near back practically in Boulder City that the general public didn't like it. So I think it lasted, what, 2 years maybe, and that was it.
Not quick. I mean, it was very quick. I mean, and why is it, talking about boxing, why is it that boxing has lost its luster to the UFC?
Because we don't have Hearns and Hagler. We don't have, Duran. We don't have those type of people where every 4 or 5 times a year had these major fights. And obviously they were American born, and that really helped also. These fights were like mini Super Bowls. We've lost that. We also lost it because a lot of the kids at the young age go to football now. A lot of the kids play other sports, and the UFC is very popular. So we need to create somebody here to, push the buttons. Tyson pushed the buttons. Larry Holmes pushed the buttons. Muhammad Ali pushed the buttons. We ain't got no more button pushers, kid.
Mayweather hasn't pushed it?
Well, it's because there's no competition out there. And the only reason we get money on that fight is two ways. The people who hate him want to see him lose, and the people who love him bet on him.
Hey, thank you so much, Jimmy. The Vegas Stats and Information Network, VSIN. You can see that the South Point. What time are you on air there?
11 to 5 every day.
11 to 5 every day. You can catch it on Sirius Rating and on the internet.
Yes.
VSIN.com, is that it?
You got it, my friend.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much, Jimmy Vaccaro. There are many types of careless drivers. Those who text and drive, drink and drive, and those distracted drivers. If you've been hurt, you need to call me.
Enough said. Call Ed. EdBernstein.com.